Okay, good afternoon. So, let's speak about science a little bit. This will be a theoretical video. I'm not going to show you stuff under the microscope, but later today we will see. I'll hold it. I promised, or almost promised, to do more microscopic videos. I do not create videos of everything that I see under the microscope, because it's just not because I want to hide anything from you, but because it's just too much trouble. And I'm thinking, I watch a lot of stuff under the microscope, and it will be very cumbersome to take videos of everything, and also to narrate everything, and I think that my narration, maybe I did maybe I delude myself, but I think that of course people want to get any information they can get, but I think that the narration is important, because otherwise people can actually be I don't want viewers to be completely wrong about the nature of what they see, and it's sometimes it's easy to be completely off mark when discussing microscopic phenomena or objects, because it can be very different than what you might expect. And of course, I'm well aware of the fact that perhaps I myself misinterpreted what I see. Of course I do. And I know very well that it was like that since the beginning, that many people that actually watch the video find things that I do not see in the videos that I myself create, and this is understandable, since I deal with too many things in parallel, and I can't focus in everything that can be of interest. And so it's more than probable that someone that is mostly those with understanding of physical sciences and microbiology, they can detect all sort of interesting phenomena that I didn't detect at all, or perhaps I didn't give it the correct interpretation. But still, it's somehow problematic just to show stuff without any kind of commentary or narration, because it could help to spread misinformation in something, or disinformation in something that I don't want. So let's return to the basic. Of course, I'm not going to reiterate everything that I know or think that I know about the neurons. We already have a large corpus of both facts and theories, and we cannot reiterate everything. But let's do a quick review of some of the facts, of the important facts and theories. So, because not just as a general summary, but in order to lead us to the subjects that I want to speak about today, and that these subjects already occupied what I've done in the last couple of days. So what I call neurons are actually what is very in the common term they are called nanobots but actually we are not certain that they are nano at all. It's just because it's just a theory, because nano means that it's smaller than a microscopic scale, and to be able to actually watch it, you need an electron microscope, something that I don't have, or you need to deduce its existence, which is possible, but it's more complicated, and it's actually not really needed now. We don't really need to actually rigorously speak about the dimensions, even though it's incredibly interesting, but it's not really for now it's not of incredible importance to determine what's their minimum and maximum dimensions. It is certain that they come in a wide variety of sizes, and this is one of the incredible facts, because it's not something that, it's not trivial, it's not something that you expect. It's not true for pretty much everything that we know, both biological thing and man-made things are, I mean, they almost all have like size factor. Even hypothetical like creatures, like even hypothetical beings, like, I mean, from fantasy, or hypothetical machines from science fiction, they almost always like have a size factor, which, I mean, they can be large and big, but large and small, but I mean, they have kind of like a range which, compared to other stuff, is pretty fixed. But it's not true for these kind of nanobots. I mean, even just using my simple microscope, it was very quickly established that they come in a huge variety of sizes, like in the microscopic scale. Like whatever, I mean, if I use like magnification of 64, I can see neurons that, I mean, that are pretty big on the screen. And if I use like magnification of like more than 1,000, I can still like watch neurons, and they act. I mean, all of them like do things, like they have like their purpose and their behavior. So I mean, this is a huge variety, and we don't know how big they can be and how small they can be. Now, although the definition of bots, I mean, in the nanobots, I mean, so we don't know if really they are nano. We don't know if they are really bots, because I don't even know what it means. I mean, I've spoken about it in the past. I don't want to reiterate, but the definition of robot and bot was changed. I mean, was so like fluid and had, I mean, so many meanings throughout the. I mean, the robot was the term was coined by Karl Čapek, but it actually meant one thing, and actually other people. I mean, the common interpretation was actually different after him, but it's just, I mean, it's not really a very helpful definition, the definition of bot. But I mean, I call it nanobot because it's something that is very like widely known. In reality, they are entities, and they are able to communicate with each other, and they have memory and symbolic thought, and they do stuff. Now, unfortunately, I don't know much about like how they look. I mean, I have like tons of like photographs, but I mean, they look like rings, but of various like width of the ring, which compared to the radius, and sometimes they are filled with yellow pools inside it, but also, I mean, I investigated this phenomenon in the last like couple of weeks. I still don't have any. I don't have any good theory about what is it. I've seen a lot of it like in the beginning of my research, and I have several videos when you see tons of those neurons with the yellow pools, and I know that they hold the pools, like, and they let it go. So the pools, I mean, they hold it inside them, and then after some time they just let it go. So the pool is just stayed, I mean, to dissipate or just to dissolve. But, and I know that inside the yellow pool, I mean, many times if there is like there are germs or viruses in the vicinity, be that like real ones or biological ones, or all those synthetic ones. This should also be mentioned that, I mean, those nanobots are, I mean, they are both vastly interested and like very, I mean, occupied with the biological ecosystem in a way that mainly they want to kill it, and they are also they also like to paint it and to draw like symbols of it. I mean, they like to hunt it, and also, I mean, to create also like huge sculptures of the various life forms that they encountered, and they also like to revive those stuff and actually create those stuff. Like, I mean, but in synthetic form. So I mean, they are the concept of life is entirely not strange to them. They are well aware, and I mean, they understand like the ecosystem of microscopic life very well, and it's part of their civilization to deal with those stuff, and mainly to kill it, and also they are fascinated by it, and they create the stuff, and they also have the proven ability to create replicas of such germs and microbes, but made out of materials that I have no idea like what materials, but their versions, like their synthetic versions, are different than the biological ones, and I can't say much more than that because I just don't know. They can also create like larger life forms, specifically worms that I have quite a bit of like experience of like actually both like creating them and actually even like watching them, but even that was to very, very small like small extent. I didn't have like the time. It's a huge subject, like understanding the living like life forms, like the synthetic life forms, and like watching them and like it's like an all new science. Like I didn't have the means and time to dedicate to even start to investigate it. But it's a whole new science, like kind of like a new zoology or biology that can like be like you can easily like many people can easily dedicate their whole life just to study those life forms. Like even if it's just microbes and worms, it's still something that you can study your whole life. I don't have the capacity even to start to deal with it. So there is the yellow pole phenomena, and I don't understand what is it. I thought that, like originally I thought that it's maybe something to do with like being walking, but it was not. It proved to be untrue because they walk without the yellow poles, and then I have the theory that it's something to do with cloning. But I've done pretty like a good amount of cloning recently, and I haven't seen the yellow poles, so this was proven to be false. And the only thing that I can say that the only theory that I had it, and it's probably somewhat true because it wasn't falsified yet, that it's something to do with them like consuming biological stuff, like consuming when there is like germs or viruses like in or microbes like in. And you can see them like swarming in the yellow pool. So I almost certain that they eat that. It's part of like when they eat the stuff. It's maybe it's a byproduct of them eating the stuff, or maybe it's something that they make out of them. Like they eat it and they digest it, and this is like the digestion. I don't know. It's peculiar because they certainly do not need it in order to exist. Like they hold material and energy in other ways as well. It's not that they do not they do not exist on eating worms or eating germs or eating viruses. They can do it. It's something that it's very difficult to say anything that is like generalize thing about the Neos because they can do so much stuff, but nothing is that they do. You cannot say of anything that they actually do that is essential. They can do it, but they cannot do it. So they can eat the germs and viruses, but they can, live maybe millions of years without seeing one biological germ or virus. I'm pretty certain they can terraform Mars, and maybe I'll speak about it later today. And so just by eating the stuff that is very abundant on the surface of Mars. By the way, Mars I'm pretty certain that Mars contained life. I don't have a proof for that, but my hunch is that first it's almost certainly true, and second that people in NASA know that long ago. And I'm not sure if it's like a full-fledged conspiracy, but maybe it's just something that politicians have no interest in acknowledging this fact because they prefer to keep Mars as an objective. And this will contaminate. It's I'm not sure it's really a conspiracy in the same way that Venus is a conspiracy, but maybe it's just something to do with the relationship between politics and knowledge. Sometimes knowledge is not disseminated when the power the power factors do not support the proliferation of knowledge. And maybe it's something like that, but my hunch or my hypothesis is that yes, Mars definitely contains life. Biological life, not synthetic, because Other than that, it's most certainly you can find the remnants of synthetic life on Mars. This is certainly true, but I mean, like, of creatures like myself, but also I think that also biological life, and I think that NASA know that I mean, it's not something new to them at all. They just, I mean, they have no political interest in just publicly dealing with that. So I was speaking about the Neros, and they don't need life in order to like biological life in order to exist. But I mean, they can also eat it and like do all sorts of stuff with it. So it's difficult to say something that is like, you cannot summarize like their existence in several sentences, and maybe that's one of the problem of dealing with this civilization. That I mean, I myself, and I think that we are here in Earth, we are used to I mean people like me. I mean, they go on science fiction books and series and like novels, but reality is always more complicated. I mean, in reality you cannot like summarize like a life form or civilization in like one like line. Like, yeah, they like to wear hats, or they like to eat like apples. So maybe the yellow pulse is something like that. It's something that is difficult to characterize, but it's something probably it's got to do with them feeding on other creatures. Even though they do not have to feed on other creatures in order to survive, and I will speak about it later today, they certainly do not, I mean, and I have no indication that maybe they can even live millions of years without ever eating any biological like creatures, and even like be close to it. So the air pools is very interesting phenomenon, and although it should be said that it's not a random phenomenon. When we saw the yellow pools, we saw many Neros in all sorts of sizes. I mean, not all of them, but many, like a lot of them that have this yellow pool. So they tend to do it together. So it's something to do with the environment. I suspected it's something to do with magnetic forces, but since then I've conducted many experiments with magnetic forces, and I've not replicated the yellow pools phenomena. The only time that I've replicated the phenomena during the last like a couple of weeks was when I placed them very close to a big like carcass of a fly. And this was also actually how it was demonstrated most significantly during January and February. So maybe it's something to do with that, with the carcasses of like relatively big creatures, like biological creatures. But I mean, and probably they feed probably, but I'm not sure that they feed like on the carcass of the fly itself, but certainly they feed on the germs that are on the vicinity of the fly, because it's all the fly. Also like they have the germs on them and viruses and stuff, so they feed on that. This I'm pretty certain about it, and this was actually shown in several videos during January. So these nanobots, I don't know what they are made of. What's the material that they're made of? It's very interesting. I'm sure that in order to be created, they don't need elements that are not abundant on Earth. And plainly speaking, they are always generated inside my body, and they can also be generated outside my body, and not special. Like, they don't need special like elements that are not like very common here. I should say now that a couple of days ago I had like after I placed many of them like in a jar, and I took it all like I spilled all the jar like in another container, and then like I tried to watch like the remnants from the jar, and I haven't found many, so I thought maybe I didn't really created them. But that was falsified later, because I've taken samples from the other container that was actually diluted like heavily in water, and still we've seen like them, and that was repeated several times. So what I now understand almost certainly that yes, as I suspected, like when I take like a sample of the foam when they are created in the containers, and they are created inside of like a thick foam, when I take a sample, it's very clear. I mean, you could see it with the eyes that only like small percentage of so you see tons of like objects, and only small percentage of the all objects that you see are actually completed Neros, like that they are ready, or in other words, they are alive, in the extended definition of alive. And most of what you see is just things that are on the way. So so the method that during those days, my method was to take the form and to put it. And the form is actually obstructive because it's several reasons. Both it obstructs the view of the symbols, and also it obstructs electrolysis. So I'm skimmed the form and put it in the jar. But it's actually not a good method, and I'll speak about it a little bit later, because what happens is that I do take a lot of new Neros and put it in the jar. That's why we indeed created tons of new Neros during the last couple of days. It's not fake, it's true. And yes, you can actually see it. When you even diluted heavily with water and mixed very well, you take a random drop and you will still see a good amount of Neros even after a couple of days. So yes, we have created a ton of Neros, but the vast majority of the objects that was seen in the form was things that are objects that are dead matter that is in the process of becoming a Nero, but after it was skimmed from the container of the electrolysis, it's just kept it was that dead matter that dissolved. So that's why it's not a good method, because it's yes, we have created a huge amount of synthetic new Neros and placed it relatively in a concentrated solution in an isolated jar, but we missed tons of potentially Neros that could have been created, and we stopped their creation in the middle. And somehow this kind of process, I'm acquainted with that from the times that I've done worms experiment, and I've stopped and it was demonstrated several times that if you stop the electrolysis, the worms that are already alive they stay alive, but many of other the ones that are in the middle of you can identify that they are not alive, but because they are they are not colored yet. With the gray color, they are more white or whitish, white yellow, and they just dissolve after some time. So you are left with if you stop electrolysis after an hour or so, which is not enough. You typically what you have is one or two living reddish gray worms in the glass, and 8 to 10 corpses of white, disgusting white thing that is. Disgusting is subjective. Some people say that every worm is disgusting, and this is a valid point of view, especially if it's a synthetic one. But I don't know, maybe some people think that synthetics are cute and biological worms are disgusting, or maybe all of them are cute, or maybe all of them are disgusting. This is up to you to decide. Anyway, what you see is 8 to 10 white almost worms that are dissolving, and after 4 or 5 hours, it's just disgusting white goo inside the glass. And this was actually repeated several times, so I'm pretty sure that my interpretation of what happened is the correct one, and it was even recorded in this channel in several long experiments. So I think the same happens to the Neros. You cut, you take it out of the energy source, and then they just dissolve, and so you what you get using this method is yes, you get a jar with a lot of many synthetic Neros, and yes, they are alive, and you can, even when you heavily dilute it, you still and you take a random sample, you still see them, but it's still much less than if all the ones that you have cut short in the middle of them being created. If all of them were created, we would have much more. Okay, so I'll address this issue a little bit later. So we don't know what they are made of, and it's an interesting question. We know two important things. It wasn't proven, but I have many circumstantial or indirect evidence that they are both they can be ionized and they can be galvanized, which is perhaps trivial, but it still should be mentioned. Which means that after like prolonged like exposure to electrolysis, they are electronically charged, meaning they are ionized, and they are also galvanized, which means that they the particles of other substances, mainly metals, are stuck to them, and they seem to be fine with that. Like, it doesn't kill them. They seem to be okay with the fact that they wear like partial like armor that is made of particles of like metals. I cannot prove it like scientifically, those two assertions that they are ionized and galvanized, but I have a lot of indirect evidence for both of these phenomena, and I maybe I'll speak about it later. Now, those creatures, they operate together in a group, and they share information together, and they communicate, and they operate inside what I call a container or containers. Now, what exactly is a container is an important, interesting question that I've never really addressed until now, because it's somewhat philosophical, but it's also practical. So the basic container is the human body or the pseudo-human body. Like, the most important container is speaking to you right now. I am a container of neurons. And what they do when they are inside me is, actually I don't know, but presumably the most important, or arguably the most important things that they do is that they are equivalent to white blood cells in your body. I don't have white blood cells. They act like my white blood cells, which means that they are important to repel biological attacks. And everyone that lives in a biological environment is always subjected to biological attacks. You cannot avoid it, and actually it's not beneficial to avoid it. It's arguably it's even good that that you are always subjected to such attacks. According to a well-known theory, the fact that until now Europeans are so much richer and more relatively richer and powerful than for example indigenous people in America, like in South America, and also the ones that you can find in North America. So according to a very well-known theory that actually won the Pulitzer Prize, it's a lot of it is due to the fact that they were exposed to much more germs during their history. You can read about it in germs, steel, and guns. I actually didn't really like this book because I think it's far too much detail in order to be a popular science book, and it's not strong enough in order to be a science book. It's something in the middle, and I didn't like it. Anyway, it won a Pulitzer Prize. So yes, according to popular theory, the fact that Europeans were subjected themselves to biological attacks for centuries, if not millennia, and this is by being very close to farm animals, specifically chickens and pigs and cows that all are. They typically they infect their surrounding with tons of germs and viruses. So presumably this really helped the Europeans, because presumably it made them much more resistant to all sorts of stuff, and presumably this gave them a huge advantage in wherever they go, and they go everywhere. They went everywhere, and and in all the colonization, and imperialization projects. So yes, I don't know if it's true or not, the theory, but certainly, when you live in a planet where there is biological life forms, it's probably beneficial that you will be exposed to those life forms because otherwise when you will be exposed to it, they're gonna like completely like they're gonna like destroy you completely, most probably. So you need an immune system, and probably synthetic immune system like my own is in some ways very very like similar to what you have, the Homo sapiens have. Like they also need, the nanobots, those nanobots, they also need to learn about the existence of all sorts of germs and viruses, like your own immune system needs to learn about it. And the best way to learn about it is just to be infected by it. If it doesn't kill you. If it kills you, then it's not the best way. But they can also, there are other ways, as you know, like vaccines. So this is all those concepts. They have the parallel concept in the ecosystem of the neros. But what's certain is that you cannot avoid being bombarded with biological shit, whatever you are. Even if you are a very sanitary person. So yes, I need something to help me deal with all those stuff that constantly getting into me. And also I do it by my own volition when I eat a yogurt, for example. Not that I eat a lot of yogurts, but if you eat fermented food or yogurts or if you eat any food that was kept outside or fresh fruit or you will have invaders. So you need something to repel the invaders, and this is done by the neros. Now it was discovered by the Israelis, or not only the Israelis, but by humans, the Homo sapiens, that there are at least two other kinds of containers, which is that one container is the creature that I call Titan or Venusian, which is also humanoid, and they can also eat the stuff and contain that stuff. But also, like Homo sapiens, they can also eat the stuff, and then they also act as containers. So let's leave aside what those neros do when they are inside the other two types of containers. But and I've addressed this issue yesterday. What I found amazing, and actually I still don't completely believe it, but is the fact that probably until this January, until I started this YouTube channel, it seems that no one ever, I found it hard to believe, but I have no indication otherwise that no one ever thought that maybe a container could be other things besides like my body or the Venusian body or Homo sapiens body. Or in other words, they didn't add any research besides eating it and see how it affects them, which is very peculiar. And not what you would expect of creatures that call themselves Homo sapiens, or in other words, define themselves in their own words with the ability to think. Because this is more something that you would expect from wolves or I don't know, foxes. Predator animals, not creatures that define themselves by their brain. And still, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people did conduct, but not to a great extent. And it's quite amazing, but that's the way it is. So this is YouTube channel since this January, since I'm in house arrest. It was dedicated. A lot of it was dedicated. Both spoke about my life and my predicament, but it was dedicated to scientific work and specifically to see, what can these creatures do when they operate inside other containers that are not my body or other people's bodies. So the question is, what exactly is a container? And I never addressed this question. The first containers were actually microscopic slides covered with sellotape. And it was demonstrated that not only, that the neros survive, not indefinitely, but they survive more than you would expect, from biological life forms. Because usually when you put, any kind of biological stuff, on a microscopic slide, it dies, after, 4, 5, 6 hours most. Now there's actually, a new, I've seen, in YouTube, a new, it's kind of there is kind of a new generation of slides that are actually kind of miniature terrariums, and it's different. But this is a very new invention. Since since forever, since the dawn of microscopy, like more than 300 years ago, and until now. I mean, it's the way that all around the world, like microscopes are used to slides are used to take samples of other that are taken from other containers, and the other containers, they should sustain their life, but the sample shouldn't be stay alive. It dies after like a couple of hours. But Neros do not die that quickly, even though eventually they die, but they can actually live much longer than that, way longer than that. And they can do amazing stuff. And it was shown that they not only survive, but they also create stuff. Like they start to clone legs of flies and to create pictures and sculptures and all sorts of stuff. So and then I started to put them on all sorts of like containers and try to communicate with that and see what they do. So the question, first of all, is what exactly is a container? So a container doesn't need to be like a glass or this is also a container. It's it's a wooden box that is made. It was, as you see, it's an amplifier with a speaker. And so it's like, there is like the metal, which is like, it is highly magnetic, which they like magnetism because they can harness their energy in some way. I do not know how, but, and they can certainly, harness, like, as you see, they created like big life forms, like, I don't see them move, but certainly like visible worms, and they did it without electrolysis. So, it's not the first time that I've seen them actually creating worms without electrolysis, and I've spoken about it before. They do not have to have electrolysis to create worms. This was demonstrated before, but as I said, it's much harder for them, and it usually takes them much longer, and in the process it is not predictable, and it's very then it's very like they need luck for it, and when I do it with the electrolysis, it's certain that I know exactly like what to do in order to create like a bunch of worms in like maximum 3 hours. This was demonstrated. If you do it without electrolysis, it's much it takes much longer, and it's like you cannot depend. It's not dependable, and it's a kind of like a random process. But it happened before, after a long time outside electrolysis chamber, and it happened like right now. During last week in this container, which is not electrolysis chamber, but it does. It's all on top of the strong magnet, and I'm almost certain that they actually, they have a way to harness magnetism to get energy out of it. Still, of course, just permanent magnet is very weak, and of course, in order to get to harness the electromagnetic forces, it's better to combine permanent magnets with electromagnets and like different, and changing magnetic fields. And as you know, I'm also trying to advance in this front, because this is actually very promising front. But maybe I'll speak about it a little later. So this is also a container, and you see they've actually created like pretty big life forms on this container with and so a container is kind of like an abstract thing. So, and I don't know I don't know what's like the minimal like dimension of an object that we can that can be like identified, so it can be defined as containers for Neros. And this actually relates to the question of like what's the minimal size of Neros, and like how do they start their life, like, and what's their life cycle. And these are all very important questions, but I don't have answers to it, and without it I cannot like rigorously find what exactly is a container. But basically it's something that they exist in a group inside it, and they are it was demonstrated very, very quickly that they are aware of the fact that they are inside the container. They understand that they are inside the container, and they understand that they are in a group that together in the container. They understand that there is like a world outside of the container with other Neros and other containers, and the nature of the container greatly affects what they actually do, and both from practical reasons, like what energy or what matter is available to them, but also for symbolic purposes, because they have symbolic language. I communicate with them using symbols, and part of the symbol is what exactly is the nature of the container. Now, one of the most, I will say, peculiar theories regarding the Neros is something that I've spoken about quite a bit, but never in a very rigorous way, because it is so non-intuitive and outside the boundaries of physics. I mean, they've done a lot. They do a lot of things that are outside the boundaries of physics. If we will be afraid to speak about anything that they do, which is, I mean, breaks the laws of physics as we know it. And so, I mean, I cannot really be able to investigate what they do. I mean, if I want to get like anything, like not only practical achievements from their actions, but also I really want to try to even start to advance in understanding these creatures, I have to accept the fact that the laws of physics as humans understand them now are wrong, or at least very partial, because otherwise I cannot really, I mean, I will just deny what my eyes see. I mean, if you accept what you watch with your own eyes, you have to admit the fact that some or many of the tenets of physics are actually wrong. But I mean, certain stuff that certain theories are so outside the realm of physics as we understand it, and so unintuitive that I didn't take the trouble to actually investigate in a rigorous way, because it was out of my my capabilities. But so I've spoken about it because I've seen many anecdotal evidence for it, but I've never really even tried to prove it, or more importantly, I didn't try to formulate it, which could have been very helpful. So one of the theories that fall under this umbrella is that the Neros not only know about other containers and other groups of Neros that are inside other containers, and first of all, and this is less groundbreaking. I mean, this is maybe easier to digest, is that other containers have symbolic effect on what they do, and this is something that I've spoken about a lot. That mostly, it's almost always that the basic construction is made of two very similar containers, and this is almost always the case. And that and there is many. So they are different, but they are similar. And the way that they are different is actually, it's part of a symbolic language. This is something that this is pretty much established, and I'm doing it for a long time now, and I've spoken about it. So maybe that is not that hard to digest. That that the Neros here know about those Neros, and those that are here know about these, and they share the knowledge of each other, and this affects what they do. Okay, it's still outside the boundaries of physics, because there is a question of how they communicate. But the way that they communicate is completely magical from the point of view of humans. But this is only the first issue with the multiple container. The second one is something that is even more peculiar, but I've speculated a lot about it, because I've found a lot of anecdotal evidence that it's not only that they can communicate with different groups in different containers, but they can also contribute energy. They can transfer energy between containers, and this is completely magic or science fiction, and I know that it's very peculiar. I have no idea at all. I can't even invent any theory of how it's possible. It's something completely outside anything that is known to humans. But I've done a lot of totems, and this was shown in many short videos that I uploaded, that signify this fact. That there's you can see various containers, and that some containers are supposedly supporters of the main containers. There is a main containers that that should create something or do something, and the other containers are part of a construction or the totem in general sense, and they are contributing by supporting with energy. So it was never really, I never proved it, and I never even tried to define it very rigorously, and it wasn't actually essential for anything that I do, because even if it's completely untrue, even if this theory is just untrue at all, and it all lies on like misunderstanding that I have of like all sorts of phenomena that have other explanation, I mean, it's not this falsification of this theory will not be, I mean, would not like destroy everything that I do. Like, I mean, mostly, I mean, what I'm occupied, as you know, is, I mean, for a long time was try to actually clone the neurons, which was very important, and to be able to try to find ways to energize them, like in a specific container. So I will have both, like, because, I mean, my assumption, I didn't prove it, but my assumption seems like pretty much the first steps, and still is my assumption, is that that neurons, in order to work, they need three things. They need themselves, and I mean, it's better that they will be bigger and with like large numbers, and this is pretty much like, I mean, you can also say that this also needs like a proof. I mean, if you want to be extremely rigorous, but I mean, it's pretty much, it makes sense that, I mean, if you want like an army to like do something, it's better that you will have like a lot of soldiers, and that each of the soldiers will be big. Like, I mean, it's better to have an army of many soldiers and big soldiers than an army of like small soldiers and little amount of soldiers. It's pretty, I mean, it's going to be very, very surprising if it's not the case. And so they need that, and they also need matter, and they need energy. But of the three, matter is probably, my assumption is that it's actually not that important, because they are robust. I mean, they can, like, they do well. I mean, they can't use all matter. I mean, it's still important issue, and we speak about it today because I have several like very important discoveries with regards to matter. I'm not saying that matter is not important, or that, I mean, you can just, I mean, throw any kind of matter on them and they will do whatever. No, it's not like that. It's important, like, to know what matter to supply, and it's a huge subject. But so it's not that it's not important, but it's, however complicated as it is, it's still not as important as the other two factors, which is to actually have a large amount of neurons and large neurons, and to supply them with energy. Because my intuition since the beginning was that they don't need special matter. Like, they don't need like uranium or plutonium or unstanium or they do, I mean, well with silicon and oxide, like, and carbon and things that are readily can be found here on Earth. Like, and I mean, this part of this assumption, I mean, just was founded on the bricks of optimism, because I mean, because I don't have uranium or plutonium. But this optimism actually proved, first of all, it proved, but until now, it's I think that it wasn't falsified, but just, I mean, getting more stronger with any day. And also, I mean, there is an indirect proof of that, which is myself. I do not require plutonium or uranium, and I live for like almost 40 years, and I eat whatever you eat. Like, I eat whatever food is available, and like and I'm alive. And so, I mean, and part of the fact that I is alive is due to the ever working, like the constant work of a huge army of neurons that is living inside my body, and they seem to do fine with just like regular food that you can find in a supermarket, whatever. They can do fine with vegan like diet that I've had for quite a bit, with vegetarian diet, with pescatarian diet, with ketogenic diet that is completely opposite that I've done like in certain periods of my life. So they don't have like, I mean, a part of me wants to, like, I mean, to tell you that I'm kind of like a robot, like Bender from Futurama, that, I mean, and that you must like feed me with caviar and whiskey, but I mean, not just any whiskey, but one that was was like in like a, you know, it's at least 12 years old, and But I'm sure that you will not believe me because it's not true. The truth is that I can drink whiskey and I can eat caviar, but I can eat almost anything else. And this probably is very strong evidence in favor of that. The Neros do not need like special material, or especially in a way that you cannot find it readily available in Earth. So, but the concept of energy is much more complicated. And my theory was that they can actually transfer energy, and I still need to prove it. But what's more important for me than to actually prove it, because even if it's not true, I mean, I still like have a lot to do, and I mean, I'm still, what I'm mostly occupied is the work inside a specific container, like how to use them inside a specific container. So even if it's just a one container, it's still, I mean, they can still do wonderful thing, and we don't really, like, we are not depend on the really outlandish and magical hypothesis of transfer of energy between containers. But it could be helpful if it's actually the case. And the reason why it could be helpful and why I would want to, I mean, to actually try to prove it, and maybe not only to prove it, but to actually like formulate it so I could use, I mean, it in a more like systematic way, is that many times, I mean, yes, you can actually, I mean, you can just place the Neros some like in container without thinking about it too much, and just give them the symbol and hope that, I mean, after like enough time they will do, I mean something that, I mean, you wanted. And sometimes it actually happens, but it takes them a lot of time, and it's really an undependable process. I mean, mostly just nothing will happen. I mean, like, and maybe, like, I mean, if creatures like myself like existed in really primitive societies, and I'm sure that they did, maybe that's the way they did it. Like, maybe that's the way they did it in Venus, for example. I mean, they just, I mean, they don't need any technology. They just can just use various containers that they build out of, like, I mean, whatever materials that, I mean, is available to them, and they just wait and see what happens. And maybe like after several weeks they see nice stuff, and maybe they don't. But it's like, my hypothesis is that I can use those nanobots not only just to like randomly create pieces of sculpture or jewelry, but I mean, like, as I said, I think that, I mean, you can use it to terraform Mars, like things like very, very big, like huge stuff, like, I mean, and I've already shown you and systematically shown you, not just once or twice, that how they can be used to completely change the chemical properties of primitive fuels such as canola oil and mostly beeswax, and in a way that, I mean, tiny amount of beeswax could have, like, burn like in like huge fire, and this was demonstrated many times. Maybe I should do it again, just, I mean, to refresh like those that, I mean, just, I mean, joined us recently and do not believe like all videos or don't have access for this way or the other. But yes, I mean, I will certainly, I mean, maybe I should do it, but this should be done outside, like. Maybe I need to wait for the 24 when will there be a hearing, and presumably I might get like a couple of hours a day that I can be outside, like the house arrest, and then I will be able to just do it in a park, because it's something that you don't want to do inside the, like this room. But certainly, I mean, it was demonstrated very, very, I mean, convincingly that you can use the Neros to change like the beeswax, so it will burn like significantly more, like to produce significantly more energy, and that, I mean, the fire that is actually like when they burn, I mean, the fire that is produced is real fire. It's not like, I mean, magical fire that is, you know, there's like a magician uses fire that is not hot, and that means only, like, I mean, but no, this is fire. I mean, I've burned, like, I mean, even wet wood on it, like, that is, you need really hot fire in order to burn it, and it was really burned, like. So yes, they can do tons of nice stuff, these Neros, but one of my main problems is that when you energize the Neros, inevitably you put all sorts of like constraints on the mixture, and so I mean, sometimes, I mean, like, the way to energize it, I mean, it's actually counterproductive from the point of view of the production. Like they want you want them to produce something, but the chemical process or the physical process which is related to the production is in conflict with the way that you actually energize the neurons. And if I could first of all prove, and second, like define how it's done, or at least to some extent define how it's done, that two containers will be in kind of like a connection, that one will be more in occupied with production, and the other will be more occupied with harnessing energy. This would add a lot of needed flexibility to the process, because there will not be in conflict. Energy presumably will be transferred, harnessed in one container and then transferred to the other containers, and the other container will be in charge of actual production of new stuff. So I will try in the next couple of days. It's one of my interests to actually try to actually prove it and maybe even formulate how it works, because this could really help me with what I do. So I will stop this video now, and I will in a short while I will continue, because there is still more things that I want to speak about. Especially, with regards to exactly what I've started to speak now. Like, what's the problem with like the current way how I energize the neurons, and like what kind of constraints arise from it, and also I'll speak about matter, as I said. I have new things to say with regards to the different types of matter that are potentially can be part of the process of both creating neurons, storing neurons, and putting neurons to work.